The wind howled, a hot, choking breath across the city. It carried the acrid scent of smoke, not from a nearby fireplace, but from a forest fire raging hundreds of miles away, a ceaseless testament to a world out of balance. The sun, once a generous golden orb, now hung heavy and red in a sky streaked with ash, a bruised eye watching humanity. People walked with their heads down, their shoulders hunched, not just in weariness, but in a silent, collective grief. Masks, once a symbol of a brief pandemic, now became a permanent fixture, not from disease this time, but from the very air they breathed. It felt like the breath of the world itself had become ragged and toxic. Just this week, the news had blared of 5 major earthquakes, each tremor rattling the foundations of different continents, from the shifting plates of the Pacific Rim to the ancient bedrock of Europe. A monstrous tsunami had swallowed coastal towns, leaving behind a trail of unimaginable devastation. And across the southern plains, floods, relentless and biblical in scale, had submerged entire communities, transforming familiar streets into treacherous rivers. News anchors, once prone to dramatic gasps, now read death tolls with a chilling practiced monotony, their faces devoid of shock, as if reporting the daily weather. Clara sat at her grandmother's ancient oak table, the muted television a constant flickering presence in her peripheral vision. Headlines scrolled endlessly beneath a collage of cracked highways, submerged neighborhoods, and overturned lives. Her fingers, usually restless, were wrapped tightly around a chipped porcelain mug, the lukewarm tea inside long forgotten. She hadn't taken a single sip. The weight of the world, it seemed, had seeped into the very air of the room, making every breath a conscious effort. Her throat felt tight, a knot of unspoken questions. "Grandma?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper against the hum of silence. "Why is the world falling apart?" The question hung in the air, heavy and raw, a cry from a generation haunted by chaos. The old woman didn't answer right away. Her hands, gnarled and wise, moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm as she sliced an apple, each cut precise and measured. Her silver hair, pulled back into a neat, disciplined braid, seemed to gather the light, a quiet halo. Her eyes, faded by time but still remarkably sharp, stared not at the fruit but through it, as if gazing into distant memories, searching for an answer beyond the immediate moment. "I've heard that question before, child," she said finally, her voice raspy with the weight of years. "And I've asked it too." Clara waited, a profound sense of anticipation settling over her. She sensed the immense weight in her grandmother's voice, a quiet authority born of experience and deep contemplation. She had always loved coming to this house, ever since she was a small child. It was a sanctuary, a place that smelled distinctly of old books, warm cinnamon, and filtered sunlight. The walls were not merely decorated, but lined with shelves overflowing with books, not just novels, but Bibles, dozens of them, in different translations, each one worn smooth by countless hands, scribbled in the margins, their pages marked by profound moments of revelation and struggle. She remembered once finding a tiny leather-bound testament with entire pages underlined in faded ink, others water-damaged and wrinkled as though someone had cried over them, tears staining the sacred text. It was a house steeped in stories. Her grandmother gently set the perfectly sliced apple wedges onto a small plate. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the echoes of generations, she sat across from Clara. Her gaze, though soft, held an unwavering intensity as she placed one hand, slow and deliberate, on the large black leather-bound Bible that always laid open at the very center of the table. Its corners were frayed, its spine creased from decades of use, a silent testament to countless hours of study and prayer. "This world," she said, her voice gaining a quiet but profound resonance, "is groaning." The word hung in the air, foreign and yet deeply resonant in the chaotic silence of the room. Clara's brow furrowed slightly. Groaning? She repeated, the unfamiliar concept echoing strangely on her tongue. It wasn't a word she associated with a planet, with mountains or oceans or cities. It sounded personal. Yes, her grandmother affirmed, her voice growing firmer now, imbued with a quiet conviction, like a woman in labor. Paul, the apostle, wrote about it in his letter to the Romans. He said, "For we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time." She paused, letting the weight of the ancient words settle between them, allowing Clara to absorb the profound image of a suffering, striving creation. Clara leaned in, captivated, the lukewarm tea forgotten, her full attention fixed on the unfolding revelation. "You see," her grandmother continued, her gaze sweeping around the quiet room, as if seeing beyond the walls, beyond the present moment. The world was made perfect, absolutely flawless. In Eden, everything was right. Every tree, every blade of grass, every river that flowed, the very ground itself, it was blessed. It breathed with divine purpose and reflected the glory of its creator. There was harmony, order, and a boundless, effortless provision. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing that pristine world. But then sin entered, like a poison, and with sin came a terrible curse, not just on humanity, but on the very fabric of creation itself. With a slow, deliberate motion, she opened the large Bible, her fingers tracing the worn pages until she found the familiar passage. Her trembling finger pointed to the ancient words, and Clara leaned closer, her eyes following the script silently. "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return." It was a stark, almost brutal prophecy. It wasn't just people who suffered the consequences of that rebellion, her grandmother explained, her voice tinged with a deep empathy. The earth did too. The ground itself, once a willing partner in abundance, was subjected to futility, to a struggle it never asked for. And it's been waiting ever since, waiting for redemption, waiting for the original blessing to be restored, for the curse to be lifted. She looked at Clara, her eyes shining with an ancient hope. "It's a long, patient wait, but a certain one?" Clara asked, the words sounding grand and distant, yet suddenly incredibly relevant in the face of the world's obvious brokenness. "The day God makes all things new," her grandmother answered, her voice quiet but filled with an unshakable certainty. "Not just fixes what's broken, but utterly transforms it, bringing it back to, and even beyond, its original glory. A new heaven and a new earth." They sat in silence then, the weight of the revelation settling around them. The tea had gone completely cold, a tiny, forgotten pool in the chipped mug. Outside, the wind still howled faintly, a distant lament, and the smoke, thin and acrid, drifted across the window pane, blurring the edges of the familiar world. "I used to think all this, the earthquakes, the floods, the wildfires, the inexplicable shifts in weather patterns. It was just nature," Clara said, her voice barely audible, as if speaking a long-held secret aloud for the first time. "Just random, chaotic forces, a planet doing what planets do. But now it feels like more than that. It feels intentional, like a language I'm just beginning to understand." Her grandmother nodded slowly, a profound understanding in her faded eyes. "Because it is, child. These aren't just random disasters, not simply geophysical events. They're signs, whispers, then shouts from a creator still deeply engaged with his creation. Like the plagues in ancient Egypt." She turned the pages of the Bible again, the soft rustle of the paper a stark contrast to the distant howl of the wind. The epic story of Moses, the Nile turning to blood, its life-giving waters corrupted. Frogs, locusts, oppressive darkness that could be felt. And finally, the devastating plague of death, a shadow sweeping across the land. Why would God send plagues? Clara asked, grappling with the harshness of the divine interventions. To punish people, to simply inflict pain. Her grandmother shook her head, a gentle but firm negation. Not always to punish, Clara, sometimes to wake them up, to shake them from their slumber, from their spiritual amnesia, to reveal His power, His presence, and His ultimate purpose. The plagues in Egypt weren't just about judgment, they were a divine alarm clock, a series of increasingly urgent calls to a people and a ruler who had forgotten Him. Clara frowned, a crease forming between her brows. But why would God need to wake us up? Aren't we already awake? Don't we see the news, the suffering? Because we're asleep, her grandmother whispered, her voice carrying an ancient sorrow. Spiritually blind. We've built magnificent towers to the sky, monuments to our own ingenuity and pride, yet they reach only to the clouds, never to the heavens. We flood our eyes with endless screens, drowning out the subtle movements of the Spirit. We drown our ears in incessant noise, never hearing the quiet whisper of God. And we numb our souls with countless distractions, chasing fleeting pleasures while the deeper longings of our hearts go unaddressed. In our relentless pursuit of comfort and control, we forget Him. We forget who we are and whose we are. We forget our origin and our ultimate destiny. We are so busy building our own little kingdoms that we fail to see the greater kingdom at hand. Clara looked back at the muted screen, the scrolling headlines a silent, terrifying rhythm. Breaking news, another flood, this one bigger than the last. Another death toll, climbing higher, faster. The images blurred into a tapestry of despair. Yet somehow, her grandmother's words cut through the noise, clear and sharp. And so He shakes the ground beneath us, the old woman said, her voice filled with a tender, unyielding love. He allows the very earth to groan, not because He hates us, not because He wants to destroy us, but because He loves us too much to leave us as we are. He loves us enough to disrupt our comfortable illusions, to dismantle our false securities, to remind us that there is a reality far greater than anything we can build or control. These shakings are not curses, but desperate, loving invitations to return, to remember, to finally turn our gaze heavenward. Her grandmother reached out, her hand warm and calloused, gently taking Clara's. The simple touch was a conduit of comfort and deep truth. In Exodus, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, a man of immense power, yet utterly blind to the divine. God sent 10 plagues, not one, each one stronger than the last, each one a call, a divine plea, a desperate plea for freedom. Let my people go. It wasn't an arbitrary display of power. It was a methodical, patient, and ultimately redemptive strategy to free His chosen people from oppression and to reveal His glory to all of Egypt. Clara closed her eyes, imagining the dust-filled, plague-ridden land, the desperate cries of a nation. Let them go from what? She whispered, the question now resonating with a deeper, more personal meaning than just ancient Israel. From bondage, her grandmother answered, her voice soft but resolute. From the bondage of sin, from the lies of false gods and empty promises, from the chains of spiritual apathy, from a kingdom of death into a kingdom of life, from the darkness of self-reliance into the glorious light of God's presence. This is what the groaning of creation is all about, Clara. It's a call to release, a call to liberation, a cosmic plea for humanity to step into its true inheritance. Clara spent that evening pacing the small, familiar garden outside, a sanctuary now made desolate by the relentless wind. The news had spread like wildfire, literal wildfires in southern Europe, apocalyptic in their fury, had crossed 3 international borders in a single day, leaving behind scorched earth and shattered lives. Reports from India spoke of widespread crop failure, threatening millions with starvation. And in the great metropolises of Brazil and London, protesters filled city streets, their anger a palpable, desperate roar against unseen forces. Clara scrolled through countless videos on her phone. Images of hailstorms the size of golf balls hammering neighborhoods in the American Midwest, smashing through roofs, shattering windows. In each frame, each anguished face, she saw not just fear or anger, but a profound confusion, a desperate yearning for meaning in the madness. But through the terrifying tapestry of global chaos, her grandmother's voice lingered, a steady, prophetic whisper in her spirit. The earth is groaning. This phrase, once just a curious biblical quote, now pulsed with a terrifying, beautiful reality. She opened her Bible app, fingers trembling slightly as she searched for Romans chapter 8. The verse appeared again, bolder, more alive than before. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning, as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. Groaning wasn't just about the earth then. It was about people. It was about her. Clara thought about her own life, the persistent, low hum of anxiety that never fully left, a constant companion in the quiet moments. The gnawing sense of futility, even when she was pursuing goals. The constant tension in her chest, a subtle tightness, even when she was doing something as mundane as checking her email or scrolling social media. It was the internal echo of the external chaos, a deep-seated spiritual disease. She too was groaning, a silent cry for something she couldn't quite name, a longing for a wholeness she hadn't yet experienced. Later that night, Clara found herself drawn to an online prayer group her friend from college had invited her 2 months ago, an invitation she had politely declined until now. It was small, just 7 people, but scattered across 5 different countries, united by a common search for solace and meaning. There was a nurse in Nigeria, her face etched with exhaustion, who had just finished a grueling shift in a flooded hospital, caring for the sick and displaced. A farmer in Australia, his fields scorched and barren by relentless heat, his livelihood withered. A young mother in New York, her eyes red-rimmed, whose son had gone missing during a devastating hurricane evacuation. They shared their stories, their pain, their desperation. And then they prayed. But not the usual, comfortable, polite prayers Clara was accustomed to. They didn't simply recite petitions, they groaned. They poured out their raw anguish, their confusion, their desperate longing for divine intervention. Their prayers were not carefully crafted sentences, but guttural cries, tears, and heavy silences. They were prayers that transcended language, speaking from the depths of a suffering spirit to the heart of a compassionate God. It was messy, profound, and utterly authentic. In that shared space, Clara felt a deep connection, a sense of belonging she hadn't known she was missing. Days passed, then weeks, stretching into a new rhythm of life. Clara started journaling again, not out of obligation, not because she felt she should, but because she simply couldn't not write. The words flowed from her, a torrent of reflections, observations, and prayers. The headlines hadn't improved, in fact, they were worse. More fires, more floods, more tremors, more instability. But her heart was different, expectant even. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it no longer paralyzed her. It was overshadowed by a burgeoning hope, a sense of divine purpose in the chaos. One entry from her journal captured the essence of her evolving understanding. The ground beneath us is not stable. It is shifting, crumbling, reminding us of its impermanence. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's grace. Maybe the constant shaking is a divine mercy, a persistent, loving reminder that this world, as beautiful and precious as it is temporary. It's not our eternal home, and clinging to its false stability only delays our grasp of true, everlasting security. Another entry, penned on a night filled with distant sirens, read, "Jesus calmed the storm not merely to prove he was divine, though it certainly did that. He calmed the storm to remind us that true peace isn't the absence of chaos, it's the unwavering, unshakable presence of the King. It's knowing he is in the boat with us, even when the waves are crashing over the bow. The peace he gives transcends circumstance. It's a gift that anchors the soul amidst the storm." She began to share what she was learning.
Tentatively at first, through quiet blog posts, then through deeper conversations with old friends who, sensing a change in her, began reaching out after reading her heartfelt words online. Her authenticity, her vulnerability, and the profound depth of her insights resonated with a generation desperate for answers beyond mere politics or science. Her words became a beacon, a quiet invitation for others to look beyond the surface of the chaos. One day, she was invited to speak at a small community gathering in a local church, a diverse assembly of people from all walks of life. Her voice trembled at first, a slight quiver betraying her nervousness, but she looked out at the room, doctors, single mothers, climate scientists, skeptics, believers, seekers, and, taking a deep breath, spoke anyway. Her message was simple, profound, and urgently timely. "The world is not ending," she declared, her voice growing stronger with each word, her eyes shining with conviction. "It's waking up." It was a paradigm shift, a reframing of global events from catastrophic to catalytic. She told them what her grandmother had said, about Eden, that perfect garden now scarred, about the curse, the indelible mark on creation, about the plagues in Egypt, not just ancient history, but a living parable for their own time. She explained how even judgment can be mercy, a painful but necessary surgery to remove the cancerous grip of sin and apathy. God doesn't send signs because he wants to destroy us, Clara explained, her voice echoing with the profound truth of God's love. He sends them because he wants to deliver us. He wants to save us from our own spiritual blindness, from our self-imposed bondage. He wants to draw us back into relationship with him, to awaken us to the reality of his kingdom. The more Clara spoke, the more stories she heard, each one a testament to the powerful, mysterious work of God in a groaning world.
A pastor from war-torn Lebanon emailed her to say that his church, once a struggling gathering of only 12 people, had grown exponentially to 200 in a single month, all of them seeking spiritual answers after a devastating earthquake had rocked their city, leaving countless dead and buildings in ruins. A young man from Tokyo, a city constantly on edge from seismic activity, told her he had stood on a subway platform during a terrifying aftershock, the ground swaying violently, and had suddenly remembered a verse he hadn't thought about in years: "Be still and know that I am God." In that moment of utter helplessness, a profound peace had washed over him. And yet, the groaning continued, stronger now, more pervasive. Not just the earth beneath their feet, but the very structures of human society. Governments groaned under the weight of impossible decisions and widespread distrust. Global markets groaned as systems faltered and economies teetered on the brink. Even families groaned under the strain of constant anxiety, disconnection, and unforeseen challenges. The tremors of the earth were mirrored in the tremors of the human heart, of communities, of nations. The biblical analogy seemed to be unfolding in real time, a cosmic symphony of discontent. And still, in the middle of it all, hope, a defiant, persistent, beautiful hope that pulsed beneath the surface of the chaos. It wasn't a naive optimism or a wishful denial of reality. It was a grounded, biblical hope, rooted in the character of a God who is both sovereign and loving. It was a hope that understood the brokenness, but also knew the promise of ultimate restoration. This hope was not merely an absence of despair, it was the active, living presence of God's Spirit, moving, stirring, awakening. Clara returned to her grandmother's house one afternoon after a flood had swept through their own city, leaving behind a trail of mud and debris. Mud still caked the sidewalk, clinging to lampposts and garden fences. Neighbors had lost power, their homes dark and silent. Cell towers were down, cutting off communication, creating an eerie, isolating quiet. The world felt raw, exposed. She found her grandmother in the devastated garden, kneeling in the still damp soil, meticulously planting tiny, fragile seeds. The scene was an act of quiet rebellion against the surrounding destruction. "Grandma," Clara asked, her voice tinged with a blend of concern and disbelief, "isn't it too late in the season? After all this, after the flood, after the scorching heat, won't these just wash away or die?" The old woman paused, her hands covered in rich, dark earth. She looked up, a gentle, knowing smile gracing her lips, her eyes twinkling with a deep, ancient wisdom. "Maybe, child," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Maybe it is. But I believe something will grow, especially here." Clara knelt beside her, the cool, damp earth a stark contrast to the oppressive heat that had dominated the week. She felt a profound sense of connection to the soil, to the hands of her grandmother, and to the quiet, resilient act of faith. "I'm scared," Clara whispered, the admission a fragile confession against the backdrop of their fragile world. Her grandmother reached out, her mud-stained hand gently covering Clara's, a silent anchor. "So am I, my dear," she confessed, her voice equally soft, devoid of pretense. But hope isn't about having no fear. It's about feeling the fear, acknowledging it, and then planting anyway. It's about believing in the promise of spring, even in the depths of winter. It's about trusting in the gardener, even when the ground feels barren. That night, Clara, curled up in her grandmother's old armchair, with the soft glow of a single battery-powered lamp illuminating the pages, wrote the final lines in her journal, her pen moving with a renewed sense of purpose. Creation groans, but this groaning is not defeat. It is not merely a lament. It is the sound of something new being born. It is the painful, beautiful, necessary process of childbirth. And until the skies break open and the King returns, until redemption fully dawns, we will wait. We will plant seeds of hope and truth. We will speak the message of awakening. And we will love with a fierce redemptive love. Because the pain, the shaking, the chaos, it does not mean he is absent. It means he is near, closer than ever before. He is calling us home. The earth groans, yes, but this groaning is a cosmic symphony. It is the crescendo before the ultimate dawn, the labor pains preceding a glorious birth. It's a divine reminder that God's plan is unfolding, even in the midst of turmoil. We are not simply spectators in a distant conflict. We are living in the very pages of prophecy, witnesses to the fulfillment of words spoken thousands of years ago. And with that revelation comes profound responsibility. The increasing intensity of natural disasters, the unsettling shifts in our world are not just headlines. They are a wake-up call, a divine alarm sounding across the nations, reminding the church to lift its gaze from the temporary and fix its eyes on the eternal. Because when the world trembles, heaven does not panic. Heaven prepares. This is not the time to fear, it is the time to focus. The God who orchestrates the seasons and quiets the storms is still in control. The same hand that guides every star is guiding you. The same Spirit that gave ancient prophets vision is stirring his people again right now. You were not born in this generation by accident. You were placed here for such a time as this, a time of unprecedented change and undeniable prophecy. So, what do? We pray with urgency, with passion for the world to awaken. We stand with clarity, unwavering in our faith. We speak with boldness, proclaiming the truth of His coming. We live with purpose, every action reflecting His light.
And we stay awake, spiritually alert, prophetically aware, deeply grounded in His unchanging word. Pray for the awakening. Pray for hearts to turn. Pray for the peace that transcends all understanding. But more than that, prepare your heart. Because the signs are not hiding, the King is not far, and the time to choose sides in this spiritual war is now. If this message stirred something in your spirit, if it illuminated a truth you've been seeking, let us know in the comments by writing "I'm awake" or "I stand for God's covenant." Your engagement helps us understand what resonates most. Don't scroll past this moment. Be part of what God is revealing. Share your thoughts below. Like this video to help spread this crucial word further, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next in this prophetic journey. And if you feel led, you can support this mission through the Super Thanks button below. Your gift helps us keep creating content that awakens and equips a generation for these times. Thank you to every single one of you. Whether you've donated, commented, or simply listened, you matter. You are seen, and you are part of a chosen generation rising in prophetic times. May God bless you, may He awaken your spirit, and may He prepare your heart, because what's coming next will shake the world, but not those who stand firmly on the rock.